Well, we don't make suggestions. Okay. I don't know which clock you're looking at. It's 6 o'clock. You ready, Wesley?
I am.
Yes, sir. Good. Are you ready, Jay?
Yes, sir.
We're on schedule.
We can start. Cool. Thanks. She's gonna make a good surprise on me.
All right. So just to give you a real quick overview of the parking season we had this year. Just run through the numbers and some things we were going through this season, and we'll have any questions for you, or if you have any questions for me, we'll throw them to you at the end. So we'll jump right into it, to the revenue comparisons year over year. As you see, from 2020 to 2021, we increased revenue 56%, and there's the revenue breakdown there as well. The big part of that is the credit that's coming out of the physical pay stations. Most people still prefer those over the mobile payment apps, but we have seen an increase in utilization of the mobile payment apps as well. The next biggest part there is violation revenue, which a big chunk of that is the civil violations, but you will go through the violations parts as well later on. The next one is Passport, which is the mobile app that people can download and pay that way. The little sliver there is the tap to pay feature that we put in this year, which we'll get into that a little bit later. And then the little sliver there at the top is the decal revenue that we sell at the beginning. And all the numbers you'll see in this slide are as of October 31st. So there's a comparison between 2020 and this year, between Passport and the pay stations. We increased the Passport 33% over last year, and the pay stations 16% over last year. And we haven't increased the rates or anything. This is just a year-over-year increase. This is the gross revenue comparisons by month. As you'll see, we increased the revenue every month compared to last year. The outlier there is April, where last year the beach was completely closed. But otherwise, we jumped it pretty significantly compared to last year. There's a breakdown there. The 73% is the credit coming out of the pay stations, 22% from Passport, and 5% from the Park Whiz. Have to pay the same thing. There's a civil citation revenue. I mean, obviously there's a big jump there from 2020 to this year. It's due to more consistent enforcement, and we travel these routes every single day. But also, this is the first year that the rates or the fines were increased from 40 to 60. So of course that has a lot to do with it as well. But you know, we are traveling these routes a lot more than the city was, just because we don't have to go back and forth between the beach. So that's why, you know, and we issue a lot more citations as well. I think the final number there was $354,000 this year in civil citation revenue. Last year, or the numbers that Lee gave me, I believe are correct, was $140,000 fiscal year 2020. So there was a pretty big jump there. And this is the citation revenue comparison between the overtime parking, which is just the paid parking violations, and the civil. Again, you see the big jump there in civil. But I think it's also important to point out here that while we did have the increased duties of enforcing the entire city. We never lost track of our original duties, which were just the paid parking areas. And we actually increased the revenue there as well, 24% to $140,000, where we did 115 in 2020. This was the expenses compared to budget. We were a little over budget this year in the expenses. A lot of it was mainly due to expenses that were based on the revenue. And what you'll see in the next slide, we beat revenue pretty handily. So our expenses based on the revenue are going to be a little bit higher as well. Those are also expenses related to the increase of citations that we issued with the DMV research that we do for delinquent citations. And actually having to order more citations as well. And here's the net income versus budget. We had budgeted to do $830,000, and we brought in an actual $1.2 million. Again, that was based a lot on the civil citations, but if you take away all the civil citations, all $350,000 of it, we still beat the revenue comparison pretty handily. So I think it's important to mention that too. Just some general numbers here. We issued over 11,000 citations this year with a collection rate of 79%. I think the industry average is like 62 or 63%, so we're well over that. And then island-wide, between all the payment, the options, the pay stations, passport, and parkways, there were over 180,000 transactions island-wide. Just some changes and updates here to go through. We integrated, as we did talk about, the civil citation into our routes. This was the first year we've done it, had a full year, and we had a phenomenal first year. We brought Tap to Pay to the island as a pilot program. We put it in our 5 busiest lots, 3rd West, 4th West, 2 East, 4th East, and Summer Place Lane. And we had a phenomenal rollout with that. A lot of people seem to like it. We rolled it out, I think it was July 28th, towards the very end of July. And through October 31st, we did just over $50,000 just in those 5 lots. So we're going to plan on rolling that out island-wide. I'll get into more of that in just a second. We put the, hold on just a second. We put the time parking in on Center Street. We got all those signs up right after Thanksgiving. And we have been enforcing that. We've only been writing warnings for now, just to kind of train people to get them into the headspace, I guess, that it is going to be enforced. So we're only doing warnings. We'll probably be doing live tickets. I was thinking maybe first of the year, maybe sooner than that, I'm not sure. And we negotiated a better deal with Barnacle, which is our vehicle. It's like a boot device that goes on the windshield instead of like a traditional boot on the tire. We introduced that back into our operation at a better rate that made more sense for us. So we're going to start using that again as well next year. So this was the Tap to Pay or Park Whiz that I was talking about earlier. You've probably all seen it in the busiest lots. It's got a QR code that you scan, takes you to a website where you put in your plate number and how long you want to stay, or how long you want to pay for, and then you can pay right from your phone. It literally takes about 30 seconds to do it. Again, we had great feedback from the customers, and we're going to roll it out to all the lots island-wide. And this is just going to be in addition to the options that are already in place, the pay stations, the passport. This is just going to be another convenient way for those folks to pay. And that'll be in the beginning of January. But that's all I had for you. On behalf of myself, Chris, the company, my staff, we are very appreciative of the opportunity to work for you guys and to be a small part of what moves this community forward. So I want to thank you all for that. And with that, if you have any questions, we'll open it up.
How exactly does Barnacle work? You said it's windshield, not tire based?
Yeah, so it's a suction cup. You place it onto the windshield, put in the code that the app tells you, and it actually suctions to the windshield with, like, I think it's 50,000 pounds of pressure is what it sucks to the windshield. and you can't see out the windshield. It's illegal to move with it on the vehicle. The customer then comes back. There's instructions on the barnacle. You call a phone number, you pay your outstanding fines, and you put the code, and it takes it right off, and then they have to bring it back.
And then return it to the return spot, they get charged for it, which is.
It does put a hold on their card until we check it back in and ensure that there was no damage done to it, and then it takes that hold off. But we do that for people that have a certain number of outstanding fines or a certain dollar amount outstanding, so they get the door.
Yeah, Chris? All right,
Thanks, guys.
thank you. Mr. Pope.
So in your packets, we've got the revised scope of work for the Arctic Avenue RFP, and we incorporated some of the comments that were here last month, clarify that it goes to 12 o'clock to make sure they know they need to come during peak and off-peak seasons. It says TBD. I got some examples in there. At this point, I'm not sure we can get this thing enough time for people to respond before then. You know, if it's going to be late January or February. So those are just examples of dates. And then also asking that each deliverable be itemized in the bid, so that if we can't afford all of these things, we can pick which ones get the best thing for our buck in terms of our work products. If you guys approve this tonight, I'll get with Eric and work on some dates for pre-bid meetings and that sort of thing, and we can hopefully have it advertised no later than the middle of next week. We'll give it, you know, I want to give a good, since it is Christmas and then New Year's, I want to kind of give most of January for it kind of to be out there circulating and hopefully get interest and get enough bids back. I feel like if we tried to advertise it the week before Christmas and made it due the week after New Year's, then no one would see it, or no one would really have time to work on it. But this is our proposed scope. I know this item's been floating around on our various strategic plans for a while. We'll have to see. To be honest, our budget's $25,000. I'm not sure if we can get all of this, but I mean, the only way to find out is to itemize those deliverables and get a list of how much each one costs and pick what's the most useful to it for a mid budget. So, do I have any extra changes or questions before we put this out in the world? Okay. Thank you, guys.
So, moving right along, Colleen.
So Colleen and I are gonna split this one. So Colleen did all the hard work earlier. You know, honestly, time runs together. I think it was earlier this year. We worked on some revised rules for the community center and Folly River Park. I know there's a memo in here I'm looking for. We've had those rules in place since the middle of the year. No commercial use, no tents in the park, no reservations for exclusive use by groups, and they've been functioning well. We haven't gotten any negative feedback from the general public that I'm aware of. I mean, have you received any complaints about our policies?
No.
So now that they've been out in the wild and it's kind of been functioning, we wanted to amend ordinances where needed just to make sure that there weren't any conflicts in our ordinances with our policies. Not all of these things on this list are codified in the code. Some of them can appropriately state policy for use by the Folly Beach groups. We didn't want to codify that list and then wake up one day and realize we'd forgotten some citizens group. You know? So basically that's still just a policy. But hopefully these amendments will remove any conflict between what's written down in the books and how we've actually been reserving the space and allowing people to use the space. I know it's kind of a weird lag between the momentum we had back in April when we originally presented all these things. But now we know it works, and we want to make sure the law reflects it.
I got one question for you on page 26. 3. It talks about fireworks, open fires, including peak torches. What do they call the floating lanterns? What are those?
Sky lanterns.
What?
Chinese sky lanterns.
Yeah, the ones that you light and turn loose.
You don't know sky lanterns.
Okay, we probably need to put that in there. So,
Yeah, they're also been called Chinese lanterns. I've heard that.
Yeah, and I know somewhere else in our code, we prohibit them, but we'll definitely add that to this list to make sure people know that.
well, yeah, I know we did, but we ought to just add it here.
Only thing I noticed is, and it's just to kind of keep it consistent, is that when we're talking about events in the community center, it specifically mentions that it's shall be free to community groups and include use of the community center sign, as well as number 4, use the community center shall be free to residents. Maybe just mention that again and under when it talks about weddings, just so it's kind of the same, since it's pretty much, you know, the same groups and residents can both use them, the River Park and the community center. So it'd be like adding in a 5 and a 6 under C.
I think that's a good idea, just to make sure they're consistent. It is the same rules for both places, so.
Yeah, y'all have probably don't have the same script for both, but maybe just if somebody goes on to read it, it's clear, you know, who would use.
I had a question, you shared with the mayor earlier about the parks and playgrounds of the city may not be reserved for the exclusive use of any group. I can see maybe someday where our pickleball group or a tennis group might want to host a tournament or something like that. That might require the exclusive use of the tennis courts and the basketball court. And it seems like this would prohibit that unless they, I think the mayor said they would come through the city, and the city as the owner of the court could do anything.
They can come before city council, and we want to propose having this tournament on these dates. You know, if y'all bless us, then you just like any other special event, you bless us and say, we're going to block this time out.
Right, except that in code, we end up saying they may not be reserved for the exclusive use of any group. And I think it should say without.
But if it's a special events going on, like say they're having the art guild's having a thing down in the park, and it's a city approved event already said in there, they can do that. They can have exclusive use of it, even though it says they can't here. I mean, it already it's already saying that about the other parks, but if the city blesses an event, it's our property, we can do whatever we want. So we're not breaking our own code per se,
Because we own it, but I think we should say, this says it cannot be reserved for the exclusive use of any group, and we should
put a
say
little caveat at the end.
without
Yeah.
express permission.
We'll reference the special event application process.
Okay.
I think that's good.
That would be great.
But that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, special event would only be triggered if it's more than 25 people, right? So
That would be fine.
Sounds like there might be a pickleball tournament coming up. Anyway.
I heard there is.
Well, they better get in here and get permission.
Well, it's city council member's not here. One of them. I'll let you decide which one.
I know which one. Okay.
He's trying out, we want golf tournament.
We'll work on getting these amendments made into a draft and hopefully have this as an ordinance for first reading in January.
All right. Well, since it's not 6:30, we're through with the work session. We have a motion to move into executive session.
So,
You have a second?
second.
We'll excuse ourselves and be back by 7 o'clock.